I am Uncle Bill.
And I am the creepy Kentuckian, if you will.
And this week we're going to be talking about one of the great 80s slashers. This is Don't Go in the Woods Alone.
That's right. Yeah, and this one was released in 1981. And it was around a time frame when tons and tons of these slasher films were released. And, you know, we'd be lying if we said it was something different, but it is something good, and it's something that you and I both enjoy, the 80s slasher, wilderness slasher sort of genre of films.
You know, all thing about it was James Bryan, who was the director of this film, was actually a nature film director before he made this, so it actually does have some originality to it, and it has some amazing, you know, visual shots of the forest and the woods. It's got a great killer.
That's right, yeah. It has like a odd-looking, beast-like Grizzly Adams sort of killer. I mean, it's hard to explain. He has some weird ornaments on his face and things like that. So it's, you know, it's a different killer. I guess you could say that. The killer is a bit different, and his weapon is like a log with a huge blade on the end of it that he uses to stick people and, you know, create all kinds of havoc. So if you're a gore hound, you like all the blood and guts out there. There's not that much guts, but there's, you know, a fair amount of blood. So you probably will get your thirst quenched when it comes to the red stuff on this one, folks.
You got some innovative death scenes in the film, and not to give a lot of them away, but it's not just the typical hack and slash movies that came out of the 80s. There's a lot of odd things that you would actually find in the woods, like for instance wooden spears that he throws at people. A couple of different, you know, things that are just, you know, right for this movie.
Right. Different
implements of death that he uses. And plus, we can't talk about this film unless we talk about the score of the movie, which is completely different from any other score in any other horror film I've ever heard in my life.
It's almost like three different composers composed the film, because you have one that's sort of melodic piano sort of theme. Then I guess the killer's theme is the constant synth thrusting or whatever whenever he chases after a victim, and you get that a lot in the movie. And of course the end theme, which is Don't Go Into the Woods, self-titled song, which is another thing that's great about all these slasher movies from the early 80s. It seems like they all have like an end theme similar to the Ballad of Harry Warden, or Madman Mars on Madman movie.
Yeah, they all do. They all share a couple of common themes. You've got some really horrible acting, which in this case is good.
Yeah. You've
got some disposable teams that they use in this. You've got some great death scenes. You've got a unique killer. You got a great backdrop, which in this case is I think Hills of Montana in it. Where this was filmed?
Utah.
Okay. And then, you know, along with that, Code Red put this DVD out.
They did a great job, by the way. The remastering process, whatever they did, completely worked, because, and, you know, he and I had both seen the film back in the 80s on VHS, and, you know, it looked pretty bad, the quality of it. I didn't know if it could be remastered. You know, it was. We've talked to Mr. James Bryan on the DEADPIT Radio show, and you know, he let us know that the budget wasn't much. You know, he got the film stock itself on closeout because it was actually expired. So, and if you want to hear more about that, you can just go over to deadpit.com and listen to it. But it's really interesting to know that this is really a no-budget film that did find its way in theaters, as a lot did back in that time frame.
And truth be known, you know, this movie is completely overdubbed, and we yet to figure out why that is.
Yeah.
But it's been overdubbed, and you know, it wasn't like it was in Japanese or anything. It was actually in English when it was made.
Right.
But for some reason, they must have lost the soundtrack or the sound in it. So you got that, and that's only one small, you know, problem with the film, which actually kind of gives it a kind of charm that you don't find in other films at that time. But as far as special features and stuff on the DVD go, you got like a huge interview track that James Bryan did, and he talks about this on the show too, where he found almost everybody that was in the film, interviewed them to date, and he also, there's some really weird stuff on there, like there's some old talk shows that I guess were in Utah around the time that he did with a couple of members of the cast, and in particular the killer in the film.
Looked like a local news broadcast that he was basically a guest on, the news, local news. And you also have two commentary tracks. You have a commentary track with Mr. James Bryan, as well as a second commentary track with CKY frontman Darren Miller, who is also a huge fan of the film, and he sets in with the second commentary track with Mr. James Bryan. So, you know, it's a packed DVD for the 25th anniversary of the film. Code Red DVD, you can check them out at codereddvd.com. They have a ton of other similar films they're going to release soon. I would highly recommend you checking this one out, though. This one's already available in stores. You can go to Best Buy and get it fairly cheap. You can go online and get it fairly cheap. So Don't Go in the Woods Alone from Code Red DVD.
And for fans of the film that already have seen the film, the transfer of this DVD is the real star. People who haven't seen the film and who like slashers, I definitely recommend this too. It's right up anybody's alley that likes the kind of films like Friday the 13th and The Burning and all those films that came out during that time in the 80s. So check this out. Remember, don't go in the woods alone. Don't miss our show on DEADPIT.com.